Szanowni Państwo, witamy wszystkich bardzo
Ladies and
serdecznie
gentlemen,
na czwartej, ostatniej już
welcome
konferencji prasowej
at the fourth and last press conference devoted to local government elections. The topic of this conference is a summary of today's voting. With us we have the head of the National Electoral Commission, Judge Hermeliński, deputy head of the Commission, Judge Marciniak, members of the Commission, Judge Bush, Judge Mładanowicz, Judge Strzelczyk, and Secretary of the National Electoral Commission and Head of the National Election Office, Ms. Pietrzak. We have also delegations of Lithuanian, Georgian and Romanian election authorities. And now let me hand over to the head of the Commission. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me briefly summarize what we have recently said when announcing the information. All those voters who came to polling stations before 9 p.m. and due to physical constraints, which is not dependent on us, of course, we have no chance to verify the size of all polling stations and the capacity of polling stations. Those voters who entered polling stations until 9 p.m. but were not able to cast their votes. From what we hear in Warsaw, there are 7 polling stations in which there's still a queue in front. People are not only waiting in the building of the polling stations but have to wait outside. Luckily, it's not raining tonight. All such people will get their ballot papers and will have the right to vote. If there's a person who came after 9 p.m., unfortunately such a person cannot be allowed to vote. The National Electoral Code prohibits it. So let me reiterate, those who are waiting to cast their votes, who came to the polling station before 9 and are either in the building or in front of the building, in the street or outside of the polling station, don't have to be concerned. They will have the chance to vote. That's it. Actually, there's not much more that we could present to you. I will hand over to my colleague, Judge Marciniak. Ladies and gentlemen, I have some very good news for you. In the history of local government elections, this year most likely beat the record turnout, over 50%, which is a very good forecast for councillors, for rulers of municipalities, cities and towns and provinces and districts. We might say that their prestige is higher and a high number of votes were cast for them. This is some very good news, definitely, for the elected ones, for voters, as well as for election authorities. We were able to motivate and mobilize our voters. To answer your possible question, I can say that we are still upholding our decision or our position. The final results will most likely be announced at the turn of Tuesday or Wednesday. We have a high turnout, so there's more votes to count. I cannot therefore give you any specific time. I would say Tuesday night, the earliest, perhaps even Thursday, but I hope that it will be possible to announce the results earlier. Are there any questions from the journalists? Can I be the first one to start? Katarzyna Gozdawa-Litwińska, TVN24. What about the commissions that are still working? You said that there are 7 such commissions. How many people are there? What's your forecast? When will the voting finish? And were there cases like that in other cities? You said that there were none, but maybe something changed. In other cities, there were no such cases. Voting finished. Delegation offices were informed that the voting has ended in those 7 polling stations in Warsaw. It has not. And actually, this information was presented to us just recently. Voters called us, we intervened, spoke with representatives of city authorities to make sure that the people will be able to cast their votes. We think that this is our duty to ensure that people who arrived at the polling station before 9 should have a chance to participate in the voting. There's no other information whatsoever. We only heard about 7 polling stations in Warsaw. Next question, please. Mariusz Piesiński, Polish Radio. In the context of previous local government elections 4 years ago and the catastrophic situation of the system, the electronic system for counting the votes, how is the system doing right now with such a high turnout, and does that impact the work of the system? Such a high number of ballot papers and such a high turnout. Is the system fully reliable now? It is not dependent on the number of votes, how the system works. The number of votes will impact the work of members of the commissions. For the system, that's not so important. During today, the turnout data were transferred via the system, and actually it was then that the system was under highest load. It worked very well. We received data from all polling stations in the whole Poland, so there was no problem about it. And right now the commissions will first manually prepare draft protocols, then they will enter the data into apps. The apps are an additional IT tool to spot all errors in counting, and only such protocols will be printed out, signed by all members of the commission, verified with the manually prepared protocols, and then they will be sent to the electronic system for data transfer, and we'll be able to see all the data. Next, the data will be used for the visualization that is presented on our website. So the visualization and the program are 2 things apart. Madam Wierzchowska, TVP Info. Another question about the incidents. The election silence was not prolonged, but is there any likelihood that somewhere the elections will be repeated, for instance, because of the fact that ballot papers were incorrect? And another question about the digital portal EPUAP and registering yourself for voting. Will the National Electoral Commission react in any way to avoid it in the future? Well, let me start from the end when it comes to adding your name to the list of voters. Our reaction is simple. We have emphasized on numerous occasions when the deadline for submitting applications was. It was the 16th of October. If anybody wanted to do it on the very last day, it was obvious that the reader, for instance, might not have enough time to verify whether the person submitting the application really resides in the municipality where he or she wanted to vote. The deadline is 3 days, but when you have a lot of requests and not many hands to do it, it's not feasible. We recommended on numerous occasions not only to focus on the request itself, which was sent via the information from the Ministry of Digitization. We recommended that apart from that request, it would be very good to submit some evidence, some additional proof showing that you really reside in the place where you wish to cast your vote. It is the applicant's obligation to prove that he or she resides where she or he claims. So you can only blame yourself if you did it too late. If you only sent the formal documents, such as the zero copy of your ID or a proof, i.e. the statement that you reside in a certain municipality, that was not enough. And what was your first question? The first question, it's hard for us to say. It's actually not our mandate. If people who felt aggrieved or harmed with the incidents that took place, or some shortcomings that, in the opinion of these people, could have violated their right to vote, then they can go to court. There's a formal way of lodging voters' protests, and the court will decide. We have no right to evaluate such incidents or to suggest what to do. That will depend to district courts that will decide in such cases. Another question, Polish radio, then Polish Press Agency. Karol Dachmarus, Polish Radio. I'd like to ask a question about the turnout data. When can we expect turnout data? You mentioned the exit poll turnout when you said that it's over 50%. When will we have official data? Of course, together with the election results, but we may say that the turnout data clearly results from the comparison with the local government elections 4 years ago. We made a comparison at 12, at 5 p.m., at 9 p.m. So on that basis, with high likelihood, we can foresee that the turnout will be higher than 50%, and it will be the highest up until now. Next question, please. If there are no questions, I'd like to thank you very much for coming today. This was the 4th conference of the National Electoral Commission. I'm being reminded, I forgot actually, it's obvious for me that the fact that the elections were carried out so effectively and smoothly, even though there were some incidents with no major impact on the course of elections. And I feel obliged that I should thank all those who contributed to the fact that the elections ran so smoothly. Who I mean, well, above all the 500,000 people or members of district commissions, territorial commissions, it's really hard work, and not many people imagine how much time and energy and effort you have to devote to make everything work perfectly so that we are able to complete the first phase, the voting, then proceed to the second phase, the counting of votes. I mean, not only members of the commission, but also other election-related authorities, heads of commissions. For them, this was a new task indeed, and many of them were performing this role for the very first time. I mean, also the National Election Office, delegation officers who have been engaged in the effort for many weeks in the preparation of the elections. And I would also like to thank all services, thanks to whom we were able to carry out these elections so smoothly without major incidents. The incidents that we mentioned during our conferences happen always, and they cannot be eliminated. If I forgot about anybody, I wish to thank them. I wish to thank all of you as well who have been with us so patiently. Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for all your coverage to the voters. Definitely that's a very important thing, to keep people informed about how the elections are proceeding. That's one of the elements of a democratic state, the culture of democratic state, making sure that we guarantee that the elections are transparent and that the final result is honest. So thank you very much once again. We meet at 6:15 in the morning tomorrow. Good night. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank the National Electoral Commission. We are meeting at 6:15 a.m., then 12:15 and 6:15 p.m. Thank you very much.